Hello and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. I am Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small on what is to be one of the worst ways to end the week, to have a holiday just before Friday. I think there ought to be a law where holidays have to be on Monday or Friday.
I think...
There ought to be a law.
I hear you.
These Tuesday, Thursday holidays.
Yeah, I'm more grateful for the holiday being on a Thursday than on a Tuesday. That's just terrible, man.
I guess. Because you get 2 Mondays on those weeks.
Yeah, that's just terrible.
You know, whereas when it's on the Thursday, it's kind of like having 2 Fridays. But, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, this isn't practical. You know,
yes,
whatever momentum you build up in the week is just broken with these midweek holidays. It's just...
I have some good news for you, though. Next week, Friday, and the following Monday are holidays, so you get to clear that off your list. They're making up for it, essentially. Feel happy about it, man. Enjoy your hot crust buns. Anyway, welcome to Talking Point. It's Friday, or as I like to say, Friday. Sean is feeling the Monday blues today.
That's right.
And I can't blame him entirely because yesterday was probably the most Sunday Thursday ever. And really felt like a Sunday yesterday. I actually had to double check just to make sure. But we're here, we're alive, we're healthy. We're healthy, right?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
Well, we're about to find out as we get in. Hold on, do that again. Wasn't hard enough.
I missed the step.
Let's get into the daily review. Now, it's the tale of 2 extremes. In the dry season, blistering heat, the nights could be very still. People will argue it's earthquake weather. In the rainy season...
I actually thought last night we might have had a minor earthquake late in the night.
You know, interesting, you're not the only individual to tell me that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
There we go.
But in the rainy season, the extreme is a lot of flooding, heavy flooding. But one thing is constant throughout this time, throughout the entire year actually, and that is the Water and Sewerage Authority will always let you down. Yes, it's true. Because whether or not we are actually on a water schedule, as far as I'm aware, we're not at this time, unless something else is happening, I don't know, or whether or not it is that you just don't get a standard pipe-borne water supply, or you have to rely on a truck-borne water supply, from which I understand one colleague in the office has been waiting over 3 weeks for the truck to actually get to their home in order to fill up their tanks.
Is it a WASA truck or a private truck?
No, it's a WASA truck.
WASA truck.
Yeah, it's the, you know the trucks labeled free water? Anyway, those are contractors for WASA. But this issue is now affecting business here in Trinidad and Tobago. Before, it didn't affect corporate entities as much. But now one business owner, and also the head of a particular chamber, he's speaking out. And that is businessman Mr. Aboud, Gregory Aboud, of the president of the Downtown Owners and Merchants Association. He's now stating that businesses in Port of Spain are paying between $5,000 and $7,000, going on for about 10 weeks now, for a water supply, simply because there's been issues with pipe-borne water. Now, bear in mind, the Water and Sewerage Authority have actually acknowledged there is communication between DOMA and the authority.
Or they claim.
Well, Mr. Aboud he has stated that the relationship that the organization has shared with WASA previously was so fruitful as compared to what they have now. And that being said, he has not disputed the Water and Sewerage Authority's claim that there has been communication.
Okay, fair enough.
But WASA says that they were actually trying to identify the problems and water repairs were scheduled for Wednesday evening. Up until this point, that's all the information that we have.
So here's my problem, right? People might say, oh, boo-hoo, poor Port of Spain, Downtown Merchants Association, etc. There's a reason why the traffic on a morning flows towards Port of Spain and then flows on an evening away from Port of Spain. A significant amount of the country is employed in this area, of which Port of Spain is a large chunk of that employment. So this is significantly affecting a large number of the working population and to some extent the businesses. And now we also have to ask, well, if businesses in Port of Spain are having water problems, or government offices in Port of Spain having water problems, or residents, because there's still a few people, households living in Port of Spain, are they also having these issues as well? Because the thing is, at the end of the day, yes, you can have infrastructure problems in a city. But part of it too is, first of all, the problem should be to some extent readily apparent when it happens in a city. And because of the amount of people that's affected, potentially, you can't just let it fester, especially since, the damage could cause a cascading effect to larger parts of the infrastructure. So we don't know what it is.
Well, apart from the infrastructure, it is going to affect business operations. So
But what about government operations though? Because the offices and businesses it's not as though one section of the city is for government only and one section is for private business only.
So Mr. Boot was actually very specific. Sorry, not Mr. Boot, it was the Water and Sewage Authority who were very specific in where customers along Queen Street, Port of Spain, Charlotte Street and Henry Streets, they were experiencing water challenges. DOMA has said the reach extended beyond parts of Upper Henry Street, but customers on Charlotte and Frederick Streets were unaffected. So WASA and DOMA actually have conflicting stories as to exactly who are the customers that are affected, which is appalling in this day and age. But tie that back into a case recently where an individual sued the Water and Sewage Authority for damage to their house. They were actually receiving water in the wrong manner because it destroyed their property. The Water and Sewage Authority said, well, we're repairing a leak. We're going to solve this.
It only took us a couple of years.
In the east. But putting that aside for a moment, I think the issue for me is, yes, it will affect the infrastructure generally, it could, but more so it's going to affect business. Yeah. And it is going to affect the operations of small businesses along these areas, which could in turn affect employment. I think if it is that you are paying your WASA bill on time, and you're expecting a service, me paying my bill on time is a social contract between myself, my business, and the Water and Sewage Authority. And if it is that it's taking you 10 weeks to identify the leak, 10 weeks to identify the leak, and then to repair it, and then your database suggests customers that are affected, according to DOMA's knowledge of those customers, are conflicting, then you really have to wonder, is WASA really going through some sort of transformation, or are they just going back?
If it's a leak, just look at the example of the woman who was awarded, how much, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Now, think of a city where, depending on where the leak is, we're not talking about one house, we're talking about a large structure potentially being affected that might have multiple businesses. Imagine this situation, look, the DPP's office is not that far away from the affected areas, right? Or where the DPP's office was supposed to be, ironically speaking, right? So that's one of the things. In a city, just the density of the buildings and the population means that you can't take weeks. I understand taking days, but to some extent, I don't, like when you have an emergency situation, do people really know how to deal with crisis management? This is a small, very small crisis, but the key point is to manage it now before it gets into, oh, well, this whole building here has to be condemned. What happens if it's a bank's headquarters in town that gets affected? Is the government prepared to foot that bill? I don't think so. So that's one thing. Why is it taking so long? The other thing is, just to wrap this up, the fact that WASA's free truck-borne water, they don't have enough trucks. It's kind of like healthcare. The more you want to make things free, right, and accessible to the population, well, unfortunately, how much money are you going to spend now on a free service, right? So we don't have the capacity, WASA does not have the capacity, and this is obvious to probably anybody who has wanted to get truck-borne water, to ensure that the needs of all of the citizens are not met. Which again goes back to why then are you taking however many weeks to find a leak? And I do wonder, and I'll throw this out there, and people might take offense to this, is this unions working again? They want to work to rule?
I acknowledge that we have aging infrastructure here in TNT, don't get me wrong. But the work of the Water and Sewage Authority goes on, it's constantly going on, it doesn't stop. So to say that in this day and age that we cannot identify the source of the problem within a timely manner, 10 weeks is ridiculous. To get that repaired in a popular society is appalling. You shouldn't even be calling yourself an authority if that's the case. You're just another, I don't know, useless organization as far as I'm concerned if you cannot get your job done. And that's the issue. It's happening across Trinidad and Tobago. It's not just one area. It's a multiplicity of areas across TNT. And furthermore, it costs between $1,600 and $1,800 for a 600 to 800, sorry, for a 1,600 to 1,800 gallon water truck to make a delivery. Between $600 and $800. Imagine all these areas now having to call WESN's truckborne water supply. You're not going to get it today, by the way. Call them now if you need water in a month's time. Imagine that. How much is that going to cost the authority, as you just pointed out? At the end of the day, it's free water. It's still costing us.
I would like to point out businesses in Tobago also get affected at different points in time in the dry season. Because, well, the Crown Point areas seems to be like at the end of the line.
Is there a water schedule?
So...
Because it seems as though it's not a schedule. It's just that we no water for 10 weeks.
Again, when you do things informally, right, then stability could be broken very easily in the whims of and fancies or negligence of people. When you want to do things informally, when you don't follow proper regulations or the law. So this is just the consequences of that type of cultural thinking. Anyway,
I'm just curious to know how is this going to affect rental values of these properties as well? Because that's a whole different story.
Well, hey, they're beautifying Port of Spain. It's just don't worry about having to use the bathroom there because you can't wash your hands. Just saying.
Anyway, let's move on now. Let's move on to another story. Again, it's dealing with a government entity, and this is the Housing Development Corporation, in which Chairman Noel Garcia says approximately 55% of renters throughout the country are in debt to the corporation to the tune of 157 million TT dollars. He said, for example, in Chagonas, occupants of Oasis Green Housing Development, 75% of those occupants were owing approximately $3.4 million to the corporation, and approximately 5,500 to 10,000 renters are failing to meet their payment obligations. $157 million in arrears for rent. That's absolutely ridiculous. But I blame both sides, by the way.
Yes.
I blame both. I'm actually just not blaming one. It's both sides. And I'll tell you why just now.
I mean, I understand because I think basically part of the problem is a private entity profit. Government, on the other hand, has to think of social factors. Not so much profit, right, but at the very least efficiency so that, you don't make losses or too much losses. But then social factors tend to say, well, losses anyway because we don't want to, transfer the cost onto the consumers, or we're doing something with the intent of it being low cost. Fine. But when, in some cases, the rent is $100 a month and they're in arrears, I'm sorry. Society is broken when people cannot afford or seem to not want to pay $100 a month.
Well, that's in some instances, according to the
It's
chairman.
not all, but I'm not surprised that if you allow such a simple thing to basically end up in this position, that your management of your general rental agreements throughout the country with more normalized situations are going to fall apart too.
The chairman of HEC, Noel Garcia, says on average it's between $800 to $1,500 a month in rental, depending upon the property.
Not even 2,000.
Right? Not close to 2,000. I say people who are actually able to get a property for that rental value are very fortunate. With all that, there are many layers to the issues associated with HEC. For example, there are some people who are benefiting from HEC housing who shouldn't be in HEC housing simply because they could afford housing on their own. And if you're wondering what I'm speaking about, does Fidelis Heights ring bells to anybody? But anyway, moving on from that in particular, I am so obsessed about this because, one, HEC, listen, there's a contract that is being signed between you and your tenants. And this is also for the tenants, not just HEC, because as I said, I blame both ends. If it is that you know you have a contract between yourself and the HEC, an HEC house is not, you're not entitled to an HEC house. So don't think because you signed that contract and you have the keys, you can now just do whatever you want to do. It's yours. You're a Trinidad and Tobago citizen, so therefore I deserve an HEC house. You're actually very fortunate that you are getting the keys to your HEC house. If you don't pay your rent for whatever reason and you actually do not go to the HEC house, Housing Corporation offices to sort this out, that's on you as far as I'm concerned. Then the HEC, I understand that really the purpose of HEC is to ensure that there's housing for all. You don't want people to end up on the streets. But again, a contract is signed between the tenant and yourself. How long is it that you're going to wait before evicting these individuals? Because as you said, there are a waiting list of thousands of people who could pay rent. And you should actually be housing them instead. You should be. Evict these individuals as far as I'm concerned. If a contract is in place, stand by it.
The problem is human beings in jobs dealing with other human beings need to practice discretion. However, not all workers in general, this is not just a knock on government workers, private sector too, always have the ability to really use that word, that tool properly. Because discretion does not mean pitying everybody. Because here's the thing, I could easily see a world where nobody wants to evict because I'll look bad in the papers and I will look bad when they cry on the cameras about being evicted.
Yep.
No matter what the details are, it could be the extreme example of $100 of rent, right? And then people say, well, God, you're going after them for $100. What's this? Here's the problem. You act too soft in a small number of cases, and then all of a sudden you have this blowing up, and it's a big number of cases. Any parent that has to deal with a child will know. You let the child get away with a little bit, and then it starts to be you let the child get away with a lot, right? Or school teachers. You can't have one child getting away breaking the rules. Eventually, the whole class will start to break the rules. It won't stay contained, right? So you bite the bullet, you say, this is the rule, and for me to enforce the rule, I have to be fair across the board. So that means I start off, I nip it in the bud, and those who have to evict in the beginning, you evict in the beginning. So you don't have a trail of people now, and you have this big, because now, politically, I very much could emphasize in that, or emphasize in, not emphasize, but I could very much have empathy for the fact that if you evict everybody owing now 55%, that actually might just be too much for the nation to bear.
Honestly.
But when I say literally everybody, but at the same time, you can't just leave it to fester. And enforcement of the rules has to start somewhere, and it has to start now. There's no good time to start it. It'll be bad at any point, but it has to start as soon as possible because it's only going to get worse.
If you cannot pay your rent after between 4 to 6 months, you're served an eviction notice. Because I understand what you're suggesting. It's going to make the front page of the newspapers.
It's just the sheer amount of people just dumped.
No. Apart from that.
That's the issue now. It's reached so big.
Sean, if you evict 5 people, it'll be on the front page of the newspapers.
No.
It's going to be news headlines. And it is going to be bad publicity. But this is the thing here in TNT, we need to actually change our mentality as well. Because there are tenants that take advantage of HCC. HCC takes advantage of HCC. But let me ask you a question. You know, if we're going to sympathize with these people and say, you know, things are tough, things are hard, I guess it, they're hard and difficult for all of us. It's how you prioritize your expenditure that matters. Right? Because if you can't pay your $1,500 in rent, but you're at the bar almost every single Friday and Saturday, come on, let's be real with each other. Who is going to pay this $157 million? Who is actually going to ensure that HCC continues operating? The government is going to keep propping it up. Guys, at the end of the day, the money is coming out from your wallet.
Wait, I'd just like to point out how many other state entities government seems to not looking to prop up. MTS is now falling the way of EFCL, among others, how much money they owe to TNTT. So the government cannot afford for its entities not to collect its legally owed revenue.
Well, no,
it just cannot.
The government wouldn't mind.
Right?
We're going to be paying a road tax very soon enough to pay
for the $100 months. I think you set up and you deal with individual cases in the sense of the bracket. How you deal with the $3,000, the $6,000 might be different to the $100. Go after the money with the $100 a month. how much money could they be really owing, get a court order, secure that fund somehow, take the big screen TV out of the apartment for those that might have that to get that money back. Meanwhile, with the higher end people who should know what's up, right? Say, or just in general, say, you have X number of months, get up to speed or we will evict. Because, and at this point, now the real question is how much more HDC projects are getting ready to have somebody get a photo opportunity to cut the ribbon to just add to the problem?
If you're paying $6,000 a month and rent at HDC, you shouldn't even be in HDC. You can rent privately.
Well, exactly, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But as I said, tenants take advantage of HDC.
3 to 5.
And HDC takes advantage of HCC, and we all know what I mean. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for your daily review. Let's take a break here on Talking Points, and when we return, well, the conversation continues. Perhaps with another intellect joining us this morning. We'll be right back after this.
Trinidad, come and get blessed at the Good News Fest. Free groceries while stocks last and lots of giveaways like appliances and toys and much more with live music at each venue. 3 days only in South, March 30th at number 4 Recreation Ground, Palo Seco from 4 p.m. In Central, March 31st at Ancient Alley Promenade, Couva, 6 p.m. And in the East, April 1st, Macoya, Savannah, Macoya, 6 p.m. It's the Good News Fest, 3-day family event, March 30th to April 1st. Lots of giveaways after an encouraging word shared.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire Tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at Southern Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
I blame the parents.
Well, welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capsule. If you're seeing a familiar face in the corner, I don't know who that is.
You don't? You sure?
No. Okay. Good morning, Miss Janelle John Bates.
Hi, good morning, Kitan. Good morning, Sean. How are you all today?
Very good. How are you?
We're suffering from the second Monday of the week. Thankfully, it's also Friday.
Good. That's always good when the Monday falls on a Friday.
When the Monday falls on a Friday, yes. But there ought to be a law. These Mondays falling on Fridays, no bueno.
Oh my God.
You know, Friday should fall on a Thursday.
Can't please all the people, eh?
Yeah, no. We
Ages.
ain't entitled, so I might as well show my entitlements at least in one way.
What does she mean by that?
Anyway.
That's a whole talking point. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic that we didn't plan for. But
go on.
No, we did plan for, this is something that's big news that we haven't touched on, so we'll start off with the PRCO ruling. Yes, we don't know necessarily how much money will be paid out or come from this. I mean, figures have been mentioned.
100 USD.
But 100 million. But what we do know is that the state has won its case against the defendants in Miami, the PRCO case against, Gary Ferguson, is it Brian? Steve Ferguson.
Steve Ferguson. Brian Quaitong. And Raul Gutierrez Jr.
Right, of which, of the last two, they already were found guilty.
Default judgment was already entered against
Thank
Mr.
you, that's the lawyer there. I'm not a lawyer.
Against Mr. Quaitong.
But Mr. Ferguson was more or less still holding out.
He was the last, if you say the last man standing in this part of the whole PRCO fiasco, and the jury has finally found that, yes, they were involved in fraud and corruption, and the allegations of the state of bid rigging and stuff was held up.
And it's under RICO, which I find this kind of interesting, just blanket, under RICO, you could get
Treble.
3 times the damages.
Correct.
It's like, oh, that is rough.
That's why we're looking at the 100 million, because I think the state was only originally pursuing 32 million.
I think
that 32 million is the, right.
Yeah, 37
32, I think is what the jury said that was the value of the damages done.
Right.
So I'm not too sure how we're going to cross 100 million, or if, I guess that's the judge's discretion at the end of the day.
I'm actually not sure, because I did not get into the U.S. law. Their law is different in that regard from ours.
No, this story is it's gained mixed reactions here in Trinidad and Tobago. Mixed reactions, of course. These people are divided on it politically. I mean, for me, I've suggested before, if there's any opportunity to ever get back what was stolen from us, or what was alleged to be stolen from us, now there's a ruling in the case, so alleged doesn't apply here. My thing is, go for it. Always go for it. I want Trinidad and Tobago to always get what she deserves and what we as a people deserve. So I think this is good news. I'm not going to jump and celebrate too early, because an appeal could happen.
Right.
So we should bear that in mind. But I also think that $100 million, it sounds like a very nice figure. But I just want to add one more thing into the equation. After 19 years, I'm wondering the legal services and the legal costs and costs associated with that, exactly how much of this 100 million USD is going to come back to Trinidad and Tobago. And that is a key point for me. Like I said, good news all around. An appeal is still in the works, and according to the opposition leader, she says expect an appeal in this particular instance. But for now, give flowers where the flowers are due.
Yes. You said there are mixed reactions, but what could the other side be? Why would we not be celebrating a victory like this?
Well, there would obviously be those who...
Political divisions.
They will buy into the narrative that it's all propaganda. There wasn't necessarily anything real here, and this is political persecution.
There can never be political persecution, because these are U.S. citizens. It's a jury of U.S. citizens. These are not political figures. They are not even Trinidadians. So I fail to see how there could be
this
could be a political football
Could
of any
this be
sort.
about as neutral as we could get?
This
It's outsiders.
To me, this is as neutral as we can get.
There should be no biases here that we could hope for.
But surely, I'm not disagreeing with you. I actually agree with you. But surely we must not fail to recognize too that the mindsets of Trinbagonians, because of the political divisions and the figures involved, there would have been mixed reaction. If there was not mixed reaction, I genuinely would have been surprised. I am being quite honest with you, but given the nature of how society is and how we've evolved, I think that it's not necessarily justified, but it's something that we've grown accustomed to.
Generally, you don't get shades of gray. It's kind of like with marketing, with a business. People who give a business feedback, they either really love it or really hate it. People who comment on social media generally tend to be also at the extremes.
People who comment on social media, because when you say shades of gray, and it will probably get into the next topic we're talking about, there are a group of people in Trinidad who they would say they're politically neutral, or they would call themselves swing voters, or they would say they don't like either party. So I think for a large number of people, they would not view this as anything politically tinged, because they are not of any political color. They're not red, they're not yellow as far as they're concerned. But you see, we always hear the voices of the dissenters or the loudest people or the more aggressive people. That's the only voice we seem to take on.
Here's another way to look at it. I'm watching in America where now the legal and judicial system is being basically used as a tit for tat, right, between the political parties. That's what I see it. The Republicans started it with Clinton, then the Democrats did it to Trump, and I'm actually expecting now it's just opening the door for more tit for tat. Now in Trinidad, it seems as though, well, political speech will challenge a court ruling, and we've seen that abroad. Is it now kind of going too far and jeopardizing that we're undermining the process of law? If we're going to say, well, once I don't like the court ruling, obviously something has to be wrong.
And that is what I was just thinking when you were speaking. Wrong is wrong and right is right. It doesn't matter who brought the charge. And sometimes it may not even matter the motive for bringing the charge. If the person is wrong, if they are corrupt, if there was fraud, if there was corruption, we have a right to bring it to a court and have it decided there. I would really wish we politicians as a whole and Trinidadians would stop twisting everything and making everything a political football or for political gain. Can we, because what are we teaching the children? You only tell on somebody when you don't like them? That is not how it is. Whether you like them or not, if what they did is wrong, they need to pay for that, or they need to come before a body to judge them for that.
Okay, fair enough, fair point. So what would this mean then for other cases or other allegations of white-collar crime? We should be going after these cases as well and hopefully not taking 20 years.
Exactly, and that's this case, like all cases, well, this is not a criminal, this is civil, we need to understand that.
Right.
But one of the reasons we pursue people in a criminal aspect is for deterrence, to show others who may be inclined that they can't get away with such a thing. And that's why we need to pursue all forms of white-collar crime to deter others who may be thinking or may be involved in such an activity. And yes, the fact that it took 18 years doesn't really help the case. But it takes so long because the individuals have availed themselves of various appeals. One of the things Mr. Ferguson appealed was whether he should be giving evidence in a civil matter because whether the evidence can then be used in a criminal matter in Trinidad. So there were so many facets and things explored by the defendants themselves. That is why it took 18 years. But that shouldn't stop us from pursuing white-collar criminals. And hopefully it would still send a message that whether it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we will come after you.
Here's the other question now. Okay, back to the amount rule. If we get 100 million, right? We don't know what it is just yet until a judge actually says it. My question is, did the other two defendants, did they get their damages assessed or fines?
And if we recoup that?
Right, and did we recoup that?
That is a very
so that's the thing, like, is it all going to be one big judgment, right? Or have they already been given their penalty and Mr. Ferguson now has to more or less deal with this on his own? Because I do wonder to some extent, it's not, you could charge, a homeless man could cause something to cause the Twin Towers to collapse and you could charge him for damages.
Yes,
that don't mean he could pay for it.
Correct. That is a very good, Those are very good questions, the answer to which I do not know.
Fair enough, fair enough. But I'm sure those are questions that people...
That we should explore.
People, right, the citizenry would have, and our legal mind here, acknowledges it's a good question. And no, but I know that it'll be difficult for some of that to really know. Could Mr. Ferguson pay? And I guess the potential is if he can't, then he can't.
What?
Whether his life is ruined or not, the money, if it doesn't exist, it can't.
So my next question would be, and please let me state it once more. Trinidad and Tobago has an opportunity to go after anything that was taken away from her. I would always say go after it to try and recoup it. But I'm also now looking at the practicality of the matter. And the practicality is US 100 million, again, it's all well and good. If the cost of handling cases like these, because as I said, 19 plus years, if the cost of going through with these cases, of pursuing these cases, are actually in excess of the final judgment to be awarded, should the case be successful, is it still worth going after it? Yes, because we want to show that
my answer is
stop
yes.
doing wrong,
yes,
or no from the point of view that it's costing taxpayers a lot of money?
I think the message has to be sent. We can't say, well, this don't make sense financially, let me just leave it there. Then what would be then you are incentivizing crime.
That's been the justification of or the thought process of the DPP in some cases. But from the point of view where he thought that in those cases, it was very unlikely to succeed.
Yeah, I don't think it was only the financial aspect was
right,
the thing that drove the DPP to make his decision. I mean, the prospects of success. Now, because what you're talking about there is just purely financial. Even if we are successful, we won't get back money. That is different from, we don't even know if we'll be successful and we're spending this money. Those are, I hope you see the distinction.
Yeah.
So it's two different things. And I would still say we need to pursue it from the detriment aspect and the punishment aspect, because this is civil assets recovery. One of the big things in money laundering and in white-collar crime is to disincentivize the crime by seizing the assets. So we're saying whether or not we find you guilty, we are still taking your money if we can reach at that level, because
in a civil
level, because civil is normally on a balance of probabilities, crime is beyond a reasonable doubt. So the levels of things you have to prove is different. So even if we can't meet the threshold for criminal proceeding, we will come after you, your money, and that's the part that's, I mean, life is important, imprisonment, but the money is also what's important to white-collar criminals.
Yeah, because then you kind of, it defeats the whole purpose of the crime in the first place. But
so
here's a question though.
And then one thing I want to mention, we keep talking about whether or not it makes sense financially, but normally you get awarded damages and addition to costs.
It's a legal cost, yes.
So legal cost is normally separate. I want to believe in America it's the same thing.
I think it can be done.
The costs will be covered. The legal, although costs don't necessarily always meet the threshold of or the amount of money you actually spend on your legal proceedings. But still, it would go some way to covering it so you don't have to go into the 100 million.
A specific follow-up though, because can it be that in this case, if the award is 100 million, that most of that will end up being paid for costs?
No, as I said, costs are normally like actual separate figure.
Right, I know. That what I'm saying is though, that when whatever cost is left over, because this is my course concern. So in this case in particular, right, just based off your general experience, right, a case that is, what, 20 years, 19 years? Would it cost tens of millions of dollars?
I could see it costing tens of millions. Now remember, I'm an attorney in Trinidad. Our fee structure is
different
from
I
America.
understand, yeah.
So I could see a case spanning all these years and going with the type of counsel they have used would be tens of millions, but this is still 100 million.
Right, so we should still cover.
I think we should still get
even
something.
Even we have 10 million, it's still
something.
All right, guys, I think let's pause on that for now, because
TNT, the land of making lawyers, even foreign lawyers, richer.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just thinking now we should probably take all our lawsuits to U.S. courts. Probably that's where we would benefit.
I hate third-party unbiased opinion. I hate to say that, but in our criminal justice system.
Should Petrotrin have appealed that case with respect to the fake oil scandal? Anyway, I just have to stress this once more. This was a civil case, not a criminal case. So just bear that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. So there will always be divisions in terms of opinion, for whatever reason it may be, but overall this is good news. Let's wait to see what happens next, because an appeal seems to be in the works. So all that to more All that and more to come here in TNT. But for now, we take a break here on Talking Points. And when we return, we'll get into some more gray area. We'll be right back after this.
Trinidad, come and get blessed at the Good News Fest. Free groceries while stocks last and lots of giveaways like appliances and toys and much more with live music at each venue. 3 days only in South, March 30th at number 4 Recreation Ground, Palo Seco from 4 p.m. In Central, March 31st at Ancient Alley Promenade, Couva, 6 p.m. And in the East, April 1st, Macoya, Savannah, Macoya, 6 p.m. It's the Good News Fest, 3-day family event, March 30th to April 1st. Lots of giveaways after an encouraging word shared.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
We haven't even started the topic and my co-host is turning red.
Yeah, because this topic is bothering me on multiple levels now. And it's not supposed to. It doesn't have to get to this point. And we're talking about, well, next week Tuesday will be, I believe it's 5 p.m., when the THA executive and the majority of the legislature will come together and launch a new political entity. And it has caused controversy. And I find that the controversy it has caused and the reasons for that is in and of itself controversial, and I disagree heavily with it.
Somebody please bring a bottle of Limacol for my co-host.
Limacol, Vicks, Tylenol.
Janelle,
yes?
What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are, if Farley wants to launch a party, let him go ahead. Because honestly, he needs to do it now. The Tobagonians voted for him as part of a slate, voted for him and his cohorts as part of a slate, and now they're independents. They're kind of floating. It brings a sense of indecision and insecurity. So I think they need to form this party, and they need to do it now in thinking ahead in the
now
future.
Or it's late, because he said January, and I think April is late.
I think there's still time, because they came into power under the PDP in December 2021, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's a 4-year term. So I think they need to do it while they're still sort of in people's good graces. So I'm looking at it, again, I'm thinking about it in terms of their ability to win in the next 4 years.
Okay.
So now is the time. Maybe a little late if you want to make that
So
argument.
in other words, whilst we are still at the helm of the Tobago House of Assembly, our campaign in the next 2.5 years begins now.
Yes.
Basically.
The campaign began for the PNM since
the
December.
loss, yeah.
Since the loss.
But not only that, I will acknowledge the fact that, yes, you're leaving the political party you're a part of, so you have to build from scratch. So you cannot, and this is something that a lot of the third force wannabes in Trinidad seem to not understand. You don't have time. Yes. Unless you want to say the next election you're going to take off, so you will have close to like 7 to 8 years of time. You don't have time. If you want to launch now, and it could be you launch right after the last general, and you have 5 years to the next general, you don't have time.
And that's the problem. I think people don't realize that if you are to launch a political party, you do it either right before or right after the election, the last election. Because now is when all the core campaigning should be going. Listen.
You don't just launch, you campaign. You're active.
The benefit to doing that too is that right now there is no effective opposition in TNT. So if a third party rises and they seem to be more active and effective than the opposition, it's a good campaign for them. But sticking to Tobago,
yes.
Why do you think it took Farley so long? Is it that he probably had to try and convince everybody to come on board with this new adventure?
Starting a party, I don't think is an easy thing. I guess it's easy. You can literally just create a name and stand up and you and a couple of people and there's a party. But creating an effective party takes time. An effective party should have a manifesto, an objective, a vision, a plan. And that takes work to develop.
Also
you
branding.
You can't just, branding and all those things.
Branding, messaging.
Messaging, you need to have a symbol. So to form a party that's going to be successful, it needs a successful foundation.
So then using Sean's argument
yes.
with respect to
we haven't even gone into
the previous section. No.
On air. Okay.
And tying that back into what Janelle just said, how much, we're still waiting to see the launch, but if we are to try and analyze this and maybe make assumptions based off of that, how much of this new vision, this manifesto, this direction, is this party going to be? How much are they going to be different from the goals that they campaigned on when a member of the PDP?
Here's the interesting thing that I think people are forgetting, that I think Ansel Dennis is forgetting and Kelvin Morris is forgetting. When they technically are advising people, hey, you know what? Don't worry about the THA Act, where you're supposed to be voting on the individual strength of the candidate. Party politics, right? That's the implication of what they're saying if people don't understand it. It sounds nice on the surface to me, but it's just an emotional argument that's leading you to your ruin. My thing is this. Who could reasonably say, that the election campaign that won 14-1 was the brainchild of Watson?
All right, okay, I understand that. I heard that before,
I say that to say that the branding, the messaging, right, the slogans, when they went out there to campaign for that victory, came from those 15 to 16 people, because it includes the councillors, right? So the challenge is not so much it's to differentiate themselves to a point, yes, but technically it's to differentiate themselves on a practical level from themselves.
From the PDP.
Right?
Yes.
Because they were the ones, I would say, that crafted us. Duke was not on television saying, let me fix this, right? He was one of the least vocal people in the leadership of the
strategically, because he's least vocal as on TV and in the media doesn't mean he was a key craft in the background. We can never speak to that just because we don't see your face.
Have we ever? I could be wrong. This is somewhat facetious, but have we even ever heard you say the slogan, let me fix this?
I mean, I have.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
But anyway,
I haven't, but fair
as
enough.
you were saying, Janelle, yes, we cannot, and I've said this before, to a certain extent, let us give Watson due credit where credit is due. And it's very little bit, but still acknowledge that there's some that's there. You don't know what he was doing in the background. And this is why I'm asking, to what extent is this new organization, their manifesto and their vision and their goals that they'd like to achieve going to be very different to the ones that they campaigned on under the PDP? Because if they have to differentiate themselves from themselves, which is going to be quite
Which
a
is
difficult
actually
job to
not
do,
easy.
right?
It's harder than you
It
think.
might be easy, but when they were campaigning before, they were neophytes. Most of them, they never sat in the Tobago House of Assembly. Now they've had a year and something to sit. Maybe they would see the vision might change. They might see the problems a little differently.
Evolve.
They might evolve. They might have new ideas. Judging something from the outside is very different from being on the inside.
Now, I have a question. Normally, we take it for granted in TNT, the two parties are PNM, UNC, UNC, PNM, however you want to order, you want to put them in. And then everybody else is a potential third party. Why is it? It seems as though everybody wants to label this new party, the party that holds 14 seats in the legislature, in the assembly, as well as, I believe, the councillors, right, that has the executive, label it as a third party. Technically speaking, shouldn't we now be waiting to see which one out of the PNM and the PDP ends up as the third party?
Well, they're the third party because they're the newest. They will be the newest formed, and the history has shown, and you have to judge the future. We most likely judge the future by the past. History has shown that most parties that come after the PNM have failed. And we have to look at why. So that's why for now, until they've proven themselves, because they started the PDP, they were the new and they failed. So why would they be different? Why would this new party be different?
Do you remember when, following Kamala Persad-Bissessar becoming political leader of the United National Congress, I think in 2009, do you all recall that how there was a breakaway called the UNCA or UNC Alliance?
Big memories of that.
Yes, so then to a certain degree, this is more or less PDP Alliance. But again, let's just wait to see what happens.
But we've never seen a third party holding not just a majority, but like for all intents and purposes, I think it's actually 13 seats in the assembly, then a councillor's seat.
The PDP.
Right?
The third party is now the PDP.
We've never seen a third party have a commanding majority, right? We've never seen that. So to say that this is going to play by the usual rules, I think...
I think automatically
it's different.
PDP is
They're
the third
different
party.
because third parties, when we normally look at them, we normally examine them in the context of general elections. And the reasons third parties normally fail, well, there's several. In Trinidad is we tie the first past the post system with our racially driven politics.
Right.
We don't really have the racially driven politics in Tobago because of the ethnic makeup of the individuals. I would also say that third parties fail because when they actually get into power, let's look at the CUP, there's a lot of infighting. Look at the CUP, look at the NAR, Basil Pandey and ANR Robinson. It seems to me they don't have a proper foundation. They seem to be there put together. How somebody put it, boy? A kind of team. They put together a team just to defeat the PNM without a proper basis of pushing and progressing the country forward. Yes.
Help guide them moving forward. I think the COP also made the mistake of, well, we became UNCA in that situation. But here's the thing, UNC's alliance was not the entire parliamentary slate of the UNC leaving Kamala by herself.
Bear in mind as well what you've just suggested there with the NAR. I hear you. I'm, again, not disagreeing with you, but I'm looking at it all around. People back then themselves, citizens would have, given the outcome of that election, would have probably said defeating the PNM alone was making progress for Trinidad and Tobago. So,
but then what? And that's the thing, they stall after that. Whereas the PNM has a vision, a foundation. When you look at the Constitution, it's about progressing the country and the Caribbean as a whole.
Here's the
okay,
problem.
but which political party has not argued that my vision is for progressing TNT? It's what you do when you're in power.
Right.
And economists have made arguments that the years after the NAR was the greatest growth TNT has seen.
Right, but they could not sustain it because they could not...
Who can sustain it after?
Well, to be fair, that is true. To be fair to the NAR, it was very easy for the country to take the short-sighted view and vote back in the PNM. Here's the thing, though. I believe you're right in the sense that, look, if your goal is to win an election, a.k.a. defeat the party that you don't like, the problem is that goal technically has nothing to do with regards to the benefit of the country. Yes, it sounds like it's for the benefit of the country, but what is the goal? To win the election. And we have seen where the tactics to win the election, at the end of the day, the NAR did not use tactics to win the next election. They did use tactics, whether by force under the IMF or by their own judgment, for the benefit of the economy, at least in some respects.
But then we had the infighting, and as the next
Right.
thing with these, what they call them, pickup teams. I think that's what somebody described it as.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yes.
That is a good way to put it.
I also think that the launch of this party, is it Tuesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday.
It's a good opportunity as well for the PNM Tobago Council to start their campaign. I know with Ansel Dennis now in that position, he has been speaking a lot more. He's at times very hesitant to come on air, just bear that in mind. But go ahead, Janelle.
I don't like the word campaigning in this context. Campaigning gives you a sense that we're only doing something to win an election. The PNM is not campaigning in Tobago. The PNM is building on has recognized that some things may have gone wrong in the last elections, and we're working with the people.
But
it's
you're
not
the
about
same-
campaigning.
But you're the same individual who says the campaign starts as soon as the election is over.
For these pickup sides, that's all about campaigning.
Well, right, but
PNM has been working in Tobago for years. It's
Here's
not
my
about.
problem. I have constantly said in the national sphere, in Parliament, I would like to see a more mature set of politicians with more mature political arguments. What I have seen out of Ansel Dennis in this case is something that very much bothers me, and is something that I wish he did not say, or at least he did not say it like this.
Going back to the
Because I
point-
find he is very much campaigning.
Going back to the point that I was just saying, and you just said, PNM has been working in Tobago for years. There is a difference, which I hope you recognize. There's a difference between working in Tobago and working for Tobago. There is a difference. And understand that when I say campaigning, again, an effective opposition works for Trinidad and Tobago. If the UNC was an effective opposition, that works for us. That is why I say it's an opportunity for a minor party to now try and build themselves. What the PNM Tobago Council should be doing is whether or not you want to look at it at campaigning, because at the end of the day, you'll always be campaigning to gain political points. If they had individuals that could come forward and not dispute for disputing's sake, but make logical arguments over certain things that the THE says or does, that is beneficial for all, including the PNM Tobago Council.
Let's put it this way. Ethically speaking, the PNM got a big mandate to say, we don't want you right now, with at least the slate that was there. So I understand Ansel Dennis is not Tracy Davis and Celestine. Is he ready with a slate if elections had to be called now? Now, granted, if something happened, God forbid, and the majority of the THA is unable to serve, and we needed to call elections now, right? I understand that, and it will be a difficult situation. That's very challenging, but we do the best with what we've got. But the slate is there. So I don't think that Mr. Dennis has a slate and is ready to go. So the fact that he's saying call elections now...
I would disagree.
Well, you know,
the
but
PNM is a massive machinery that goes beyond any particular person at any particular time.
Right, and that machinery gave a slate that more or less lost 14-1.
Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but that doesn't mean your machinery is overall ineffective and we should throw it away.
It's not that. It's just that it was a year ago. So because it was a year ago, I don't think that, listen, if it'll be very funny if Mr. Dennis has called elections now, and then the only two parties at the end of those elections is the PDP and Farley's new party.
I don't...
And I know and the only thing is we know that Mr. Farley and they will not be calling elections anytime soon anyway. So yes, sometimes there's a bit of politicking at times.
That's why he could say it.
All right, hold on, Sean.
Thank you.
Hold on, because we have to go for a break in a moment, but very quickly, let me just raise this, is that possibly the worst thing that could happen, kind of what you're saying is calling an election now. Because if they're calling elections to solidify this new party and say elections are in 90 days' time, I don't know if the PNM have anything to stand on.
It'll make it a mess.
And two, a machinery. We don't need machines running in Trinidad and Tobago right now, darling. We do not need machines running.
That is unfair to put that shot in when we're going for break,
I
Kitan.
want people a people-centered approach, not machines.
Hey, political machinery is to win elections. What did I just say? If your goal is to win elections, nothing in there says for the benefit.
General John Bates, it's good seeing you once more.
It's good seeing you guys.
All right, and have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend.
Don't worry, you can get us back next week.
Next week, God willing.
We'll actually work on next week. It's Friday. Most likely we wouldn't be having a show. But we will work on that. Don't worry. Okay. Janelle, you're welcome here anytime. Right. So, folks, we'll take a break. And when we return, well, we open up the phone lines. Stay tuned.
Is it politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
But if we died with Christ, we have faith that we will also live with him. We know that Christ has been raised from the dead, and he will never die again. Death no longer has power over him. He died to sin once and for all with his death, but he lives for God with his life. Join WESN as we explore the death and resurrection of Christ with He is Risen, a perspective from bearing leaders within the Christian faith. He is Risen, starting March 27th, only on WESN, the content capital.
Trinidad, come and get blessed at the Good News Fest. Free groceries while stocks last and lots of giveaways like appliances and toys and much more with live music at each venue. 3 days only in South, March 30th at number 4 Recreation Ground, Palo Seco from 4 p.m. In Central, March 31st at Ancient Alley Promenade, Couva, 6 p.m. And in the East, April 1st, Macoya, Savannah, Macoya, 6 p.m. It's the Good News Fest, 3-day family event, March 30th to April 1st. Lots of giveaways after an encouraging word shared.
Well, welcome back. Once more, we thank Mr. Nell John Bates for joining us on the program this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a while, but we do have a question for you before we open up the phone lines. It's time for your question of the day. It's a question that I asked on Wednesday, and I thank my co-host for actually, reminding me, why should I, as a young person or as a youth of Trinidad and Tobago, stay and live in TNT? Could you make an argument, and a good argument? Don't tell me because Trinidad's a nice place, it's sweet, you have the beach. No. Could you make a justified argument as to why I, as a young individual, a youth of TNT, should stay, live and work here? Anyway, the phone lines are open. The question is on your screen. The phone lines will be open now where you can join the conversation. Join Sean and I this morning. We know some of you are still feeling the Monday blues, or I don't know if you're feeling the fry. Some people took probably an extended long weekend. Today might have been a day off.
That is true. Yeah. I mean, the roads felt that way. Let's put it out. I don't know to what extent that was regards to primary schools.
No, the roads were incredibly... All primary and secondary schools are closed. But
right.
The roads were incredibly empty. Anyway, let's put the phone lines on the screen and let the callers join us this morning. We actually have a call with us on the line from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Let me first deal with that question. That is a very hurtful question, Keaton.
Okay.
Because I have 4 kids, and it is while you are a member, you are a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and you would like your kids, you spend money to educate them, and you would like them to stay here to build this place. Unfortunately, the way things are going, in a lot of cases, it seems like the best thing is for them to leave. Honestly, but it's a hurtful question.
I know it's a hurtful question, but you see the answer that you just gave me? I've asked this question many a times, and the majority of the responses are of what you suggested. Hurtful, but I can't think of a justified answer. Yeah.
But you spend all that money to educate them, and you want them to stay here and build, but you also want them to have a good life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the good life seems to be getting further and further away from them. From you all, I have to say. Back to what you were asking this morning, your topic this morning. That who's the situation with WASA? In the Pandey administration, 95 to 2000, Mr. Pandey put up, decided he's going to do that, he's going to bring in somebody to do that desalination plant. Mr. Manning was vehemently against that plant. When you talk about how much money WASA, how much water WASA was collecting, and they just have to fix the system. And in 2001, 2002, when Mr. Manning was there, Mr. Manning said WASA is a $27 billion headache in 2001, 2002. And it has gotten worse. WASA now has an issue where 40% of the water collected leaks out of the system. That is horrendous. And this has to fix. And the only way to fix WASA is drastic. First, they have to increase the rate. And the citizens have to understand. We have to understand that by the first issue. The second thing is, let me go quickly. Mr. Garcia, I have it on good authority that $157 million is much more than that.
Possibly.
And they have to understand that you have to get people to pay or get them out.
Yes.
You can't have a system and you're giving all these houses. The government have these big key ceremonies and talking about helping housing in the country, and then the citizens can't pay, the people can't pay. Then it makes no sense.
I agree.
We're spending top and more because those houses. You listen to those rents. You said it. Look at those rents. And a final point. Sean, I'm very disappointed in you this morning.
Really?
You living and that hurted me too. You living in Trinidad and Tobago, and you don't understand that the PNM machinery, if they call an election in Tobago tomorrow, that PNM machinery going to kick in so fast.
No, I know it. I know it will kick in, but 1 year removed from that defeat, I don't know if the Tobagonians are really and truly. I think it will take more work to get that 14-1 overturned. They might gain ground.
Let me say this to you. It is the machinery always moving, Sean. I could tell you that, and you could ask Karen that the machinery always moving. So don't think that they're just dormant and answer. Then it's just talking. You know. They already have prospective candidates, and the machinery always moving.
I understand that, but potentially, unless you're recycling people, a lot of these candidates now, they need to get their own foundations. Otherwise, the machinery was moving last election too. It moved backwards. Twice.
Well, yeah, but of course, but the fact is, it has never stopped. It never stops. That machinery never stops.
But
all right, caller, thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. But I'll just say, without a foundation, then they're no different than any other political party, which is just trying to use a pickup side.
No, in all
win
fairness,
the next election.
In all fairness to Sean, I myself suggested that I think it's going to work against the PNM if an election were to be called in 90 days' time. I hear what you're saying, caller from San Fernando. I think the other side to this argument is, and what the point that he's raising as well, even if it's moved backwards, it's constantly moving. And how people in Trinidad and Tobago vote, and in Tobago, whether or not, whatever the TJ Act states, how people in Trinidad and Tobago vote is for party. So after 1 year, people in Tobago, we have heard that some people are not satisfied, people are still giving them, being patient. You know, they're still in some people's good graces. Even if the party or the machinery is moving backwards, because it's still moving, and again, we don't need machines to rule us. It's a fact that people vote party.
The problem with customer feedback or in marketing or political commentary, social commentary, primarily through social media, right? But also just man on the street, is that you get the extremes. You get the vocal...
Hold on, can we just put the phone lines up, please, so callers can call in? Thank you.
You get a vocal minority. You don't necessarily get the majority. So to what extent are we certain that the people in Tobago are that disappointed in the executive, in the legislature majority of the THA? It's hard to tell, especially since, you know, we're in Trinidad. We're not there in Tobago to talk to people on the streets, enough people on the streets. But I think if it was a case where the assembly was split 8-7, sure. You want elections called as soon as possible. You want to pounce on any little thing because the margin is so small. But because the margin is so big, 14-1, well now 13-1-1, right? I think the people with just one, they're in the back seat right now. And they need some time to figure out, okay, how are we going to tackle the next election? The PNM had a year. Watson Duke, if he wants to continue, he is now starting over from scratch. His entire slate left, right? But still, even with the year, it's not enough, I think, for the PNM to be comfortable, because the last thing they want is to maybe secure an 8-7, right? And then now their hold over the situation is so tenuous at best that they lose the next election, and it causes their long-term momentum to be in the negative. They want that when the next opportunity comes, they make positive gains that they could continue a proper foundation on. Because they have to reverse the damage from the last defeat.
When we went to Tobago for that election, that same night, when I was driving back from Roxborough, I stopped on the streets, was just walking around, and I heard a few people saying this. And how do you respond to them, based off of what you're arguing? That, and this is very interesting, I vote PDP this time, but I vote in PNM in the next election. How do you respond to that?
That is interesting. I guess it depends again on how many people have that mindset and why do they say it.
But arguably the majority of Trinidad and Tobagonians vote party. And I'm not saying I agree with that mindset.
But I think
we need to cut out that mindset.
One of the reasons why they probably said that was because this slate, I mean, they probably didn't have confidence in the results coming out of the PNM recently. And this slate, they probably felt that, look, whatever we did not like, we're going to see more of that. So, but the flip side is Ansel Dennis, who technically was a part of that losing slate, who lost his seat by a very small margin. He has to get, I would say, a completely new slate.
I think what also happened in the last the last THA election, of which the PDP won, I think people in Tobago didn't vote solely on Tobago or Tobago's issues, but they also it was a message against the national executive. It was a message against the general government. It ties back into that as well.
Folks, phone lines open 623-9376. Call in. This is the last chance of the week, or technically the first chance, depending on if you think of it as a Monday like me. But,
last chance for the month.
Yeah. Oh, that too.
Last
so
chance
call
for
in.
the
Let us know what you have to think. I know that now the topic that's dominating Keaton's and my discussion is Tobago. I do have one last thing to say about that, but you can call in and talk about anything you want. But one of the last things I have to say about that is I would have preferred Ansel Dennis not to just do, because this is something that the opposition does. Call election now. It's like, buddy, by law, you don't have a leg to stand on. Don't make this argument, especially since it's an argument that your own main party's political opponents regularly uses against your party. Make the argument, and I think that there is some truth to this. Look, they're political neophytes. They don't have experience. They're figuring this out as they go along. They followed Duke. They were willing to follow Duke and bring up questions about their capacity and their judgment in a respectful manner, not in Wajang language. And I think it would have been a better approach than this. Well, we had to call elections because they were voted on our mandate. Technically, no. Based on the rules of the THE election, on how they're supposed to be structured, they were not technically voted in on a mandate for party.
Right.
And this is the thing that is always interesting. And I didn't think that the uniqueness of the situation would continue. But again, it's not just that they were independents and they broke away. It is the entire slate broke away.
Caller on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Well, I just calling to check in with you guys. And just pertaining to your question this morning, to why should young people remain in Trinidad and Tobago? Well, there's something I would like to see, that they remain and try and help the country go forward. But I know there are circumstances that many of them, including my grandchildren as well, they want to leave us. One is studying abroad and one, but I'm trying to keep them here. But I would like them to stay and try and help build the country. But the government, whichever government is in power and coming in power, have to do certain things to help the young people rise and have some confidence that they could live here and live in a good place where they can help and not so much crime. Because it's affecting them and they're thinking of going forward in their lives. And it's a very important question for the government to answer, and they should try and answer it in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
So you gentlemen, take have a good weekend and be safe out there and take care of yourselves.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Have a good day. It's good hearing from you, by the way. We hope that you are doing well as you continue your recovery. But let me repeat my question once more so that you, the viewer, will have the opportunity to probably express your thoughts with us. Could you make a justifiable argument for me? Why is I? And I will repeat this question next week because I do understand that people might have taken some time off today. But why should I, as a young individual, a youth of Trinidad and Tobago, stay, live and work here in TNT? Could you make a justified argument for me?
The call actually either made a good point or made me think of something personal in that while I know of people who go abroad and they do well, right? Including people who were working and living here in their 20s and then went abroad in their 30s and their success rate is much higher. Not their success level, because one could argue, okay, you keep progressing, but the rate of the success was noticeably better abroad. The flip side is there are those who go abroad and they don't necessarily see success and they have to end up working menial jobs. And I know, ironically, I do know of somebody in that situation where one could argue maybe he was more successful here, or at least his career path was better here, and when he went abroad, the only way he could get was just, for all intents and purposes, menial jobs or not very high-end jobs, which was a waste of his talents, but it is what it is. Mm-hmm. So it's not so easy. Yes, okay.
How long ago did this happen with this run? How long ago?
The specific case where his transition did not work out was a while ago. Right. Was maybe 2 decades ago. So it's not right now. But to some extent, you're going to see that depending on what it is your skill set is that you're going up there.
I think what it is that, and tying this back into what the caller from San Fernando suggested, that he would like to see his grandchildren stay, live, work, try and make Trinidad and Tobago a better place. I think the issue is, would the young people be given the opportunity to do so? Mm-hmm. Are they being given the opportunity? No, I keep making the argument that we have aged politicians, we have old school. We have, I think if you are raising the retirement age from 60 to 65, that politicians should retire at 65 as well. Because any time beyond that, it's just absolute nonsense. They're not giving the young people the opportunity. And even if you're giving young people the opportunity, they're handpicked. And when they're handpicked, the kind of nonsense that they spew. For example, let me just use it. Yeah. In 2015, in the 2015 election, when we had fresh young minds in the helm, I thought this is good news. You initially say, okay, look, new people are coming in, fresh faces, younger people. Shamfo Kujo, Daryl Smith. We even heard from the Junior Minister of Education, name slips my mind now. All these young individuals coming in. Saddam Hussein came in 2015. Where has that led us to? What difference are we seeing? Have they? No, it's just the same old nonsense. So you have to give youth the opportunity, and I hope youth take the opportunity and don't just waste it the way some of these individuals have.
And herein, this ties back into what we were talking about, and why I am so against what Ansel Dennis, the path of criticism that he took. And yes, if the actual minority leader, or I guess he is technically still the minority leader, which is ironic because then Duke falls on his side of the aisle. Oh, how the twists and turns. This entire THA situation is a political case study. I think a lot of people should study, to be honest. But
somebody's thesis in the next
will be about this. Yeah. When you want to push this thing, you're basically pushing party politics in an executive that or a legislature that does not recognize party, but you're still pushing it. The reason why I'm so against pushing party politics, and we've had this discussion before, this is why the young politicians have no leg to stand on, and they serve at the whims and fancy of the leader, and must obey the leader, and must kiss the you-know-what of the leader, etc., etc. It is because at any point in time, because it's about party, it's not about individual. The only individual that matters is the leader. The only individual that matters. Once it's so party-centered, it's the leader, it's the first amount equals, and everybody else is expendable, potentially. Unless, you know how to play the game and you're kind of senior on the ladder. But even then, there's no guarantee. But the people now who are new, who are technically potentially at the bottom of the rung, you don't have the room, the capacity, the facility to make a name for yourself, to prove yourself, because you're upsetting the apple cart with regards to seniority. It's almost as though, just like how in certain businesses and the public sector where it's about tenure and not about merit, in our politics, it's not about merit. It's not about who is good or who is best or who has good ideas. It's about how long have you been here so that you can play the game and maneuver yourself to be the big shot.
If I was to separate politics from this conversation and political opportunity from this conversation, let's just say young people in Trinidad now in an opportunity, right? Because I keep pointing out to the fact that in the United Kingdom right now, the labor force has dwindled. They are looking for people.
Yeah, but what kind of jobs?
And
not all of them will be high-end jobs. Some will.
It's not all going to be high-end jobs, but the mere fact is there are packages now and there are recruitments taking place. One was within the nurses. That's just one, by the way. There are many more, right? And this is the thing. The United Kingdom has openly said it's looking for people. And I would assume that there are people that are going to cross there to live. Yes, the crisis in London in particular is bad in terms of living, the cost of living. But outside of London, it's better, right? It's not great, but it's better. But even if I look down here in TNT, what opportunities as a young individual am I? I mean, I'm not looking to say as soon as I leave university, as soon as I graduate, I'm looking for a job that pays me $10,000 immediately. And that's the mindset of some.
Yeah.
But even if I go to apply for a job, they're looking for a 25-year rule with 30 years experience. And this is the thing, opportunity on a whole in TNT is very little. And you remember long ago, it used to be who you know is now who know you.
Well, I mean, there are a whole host of things. One of the problems is if you're not careful with your minimum wage, you price out the opportunities for young people with no experience and potentially no education to get an entry-level job. Because now, okay, I have to pay this minimum wage, I want somebody with experience or qualifications or whatever, right? So therein lies, because some people start work before they finish school with part-time jobs, and these things help. Or, okay, you finish school, you're not going to college, but you start working right away. You're not going to be in this very low-paying job for a long time. It's not an entry-level office job. It's an entry-level, I need some kind of work experience, somebody to kickstart that process. So there are a lot of dominoes to this, and a lot of unintended side effects to various different social outlooks that we don't necessarily see. Right? And one of the other things is, we talked about GATE already. Part of the problem is we just don't have enough opportunities for all the graduates that we have.
Let's close the phone lines now. That's it for calls. But let me tie that back in. It is not just GATE. it's the scholarship program as well.
Right.
If it is that I win a scholarship, the government, I have to work for the government. But the government can't find me a job, can't place me in a job. What do you expect me to stay unemployed and stay at home and do nothing for 2 years?
Yeah.
That's what you expect?
Yeah.
You know? Because if I go, there was this case with this medical student who was granted leave for judicial review over the fact that the government was taking him to court because he was abroad working and not paying his dues for his obligations because of the scholarship he was awarded.
Yeah.
Thing is, if I'm awarded a scholarship, it's for my hard work, right? It's for what I've studied for. If I've studied and I've worked very hard and I've gained my qualifications, you really expect me to stay home after all this time, all this hard work and stress, and just sit down idly and do nothing?
The problem is when dealing...
Again, let's close the phone lines.
When dealing with people, discretion is necessary. Unfortunately, not everybody could deal with the concept of having discretion and fully understanding a situation and determining, okay, given the parameters, what is the... No. Especially with regards to large entities, whether private corporations or governments. Because just about every government, okay, maybe a small Caribbean Islands government might be small, but once you get to about 1 million people, a city in the States, a Caribbean island, whatever, now you have large bureaucracy. It's hard now because the judgment of, say, the people at the top, they can't deal with everything day to day, right? But they might say, well, show some discretion. Yeah, that's easy. But now tell all of your employees exactly what discretion means. It's subjective. It's too hard. So cases like this, they fall through the cracks. It's why governments need to have binary rules for the most part. It's better that way so that you don't have too much discretion, because discretion could easily lead to corruption or to situations where you just get somebody who's taken advantage of a situation or has no empathy for the person with what they're going through and shows no real judgment.
Anyway, folks, that's it for Talking Point for this week. Sean Michael Small, that's where we have to conclude. It is now 9:30 a.m. The day is just beginning for some. And funny enough, the day is just beginning for Sean and I as well.
Yes.
This conversation is jogging our brains this morning, but there's a lot more to come throughout the day. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to all the callers, to Mr. Janelle John Bates, and to the directors. Sean Michael Small, I hope your Monday blues goes away soon.
No, I have work to do. So just like a Monday.
Hope this Saturday fun starts. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Point. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day. And hopefully a great weekend ahead. And should things go good, we shall see you again on Monday morning. Bye-bye.